Well, the most difficult part about being a costume designer is that in many ways, you're also a psychologist, you're an art director, you're in the background, and you're in the foreground. And being able to balance that with all the creative input becomes very difficult and challenging at times. My name is Ruth Carter, and I'm a costume designer. There are lots of people and layers to creating a costume, from getting a person dressed for the set to communicating ideas, that I'm constantly paring it down. We all want to take the lead and show our stuff and be out front and look at me, but a lot of times it's don't look at me. And a lot of times it's let's be subtle. I don't do a lot of subtle films, but believe it or not, there is a dialing down and a constant understanding of the bigger picture, the composition. And I have to consistently be aware of the intent and the composition of each scene and let all of the parts come together and have synergy. I got into costume design kind of as a default. I was studying acting in college, and I didn't make the role that I was going after, and the instructor, who was actually directing the play, asked me if I wanted to do the costumes instead. And it was kind of like the consolation prize. I said okay because I had dabbled in sewing as a kid, and I gave it a try. And it stuck. And I have worked on everything from school days to BAPS, Do the Right Thing, Mo Better Blues, I'm Gonna Get You Sucker, Selma.
Yeah, I found the magic behind a lot of different movies. Out of the ones that she named, let me know which one was your favorite.
Malcolm X and Black Panther. When I first started as a costume designer, I was very much focused on doing the illustrations and going through the process. And then as we traveled through the years, costume design has evolved. The illustration process involves more people, it's more digital. I was, working on one sheet of paper with my pens or my brushes. And now we're illustrating by computer. We are creating costumes with 3D printing. We can actually, really see 3D renderings of what we're creating, so we can look at a costume from all angles before we begin the build process. So we're much more informed now, even though I think my original approach to costume design still is alive and well. There's nothing more beautiful than a sketch done on a piece of art paper. But now we can use our digital process to reverse things that we don't like much easier than it was from that first idea. When I was first asked to do Black Panther, I thought, why me? I had never done a superhero film before. And walking into Marvel was similar to me, like walking maybe into the CIA. Doors mysteriously slam behind you, you get your eye scanned, and I walked into a room with Ryan Coogler and Nate Moore, and I found myself welcomed to the team. Ryan was asking me questions about Malcolm X and other films that I had done, and I felt like I had been designing superheroes already, real life superheroes, and that's what he wanted me to bring to the Black Panther film. Coming into designing for Black Panther was definitely a multi-tiered process. There was a Wakandan Bible that gave us some direction for creating the looks for many of the tribes. When you're building a world, you can't take for granted that it's going to be a one-dimensional kind of a thing. It was multi-tiered, multi-dimensional. And as we delved into each individual costume, for example, the costume for Okoye, who is the general for the Dora Milaje, we wanted to have a uniform. We didn't want a cheerleader skirt and a bikini top. We wanted these women to be taken seriously in a uniform because they are protecting the king, King T'Challa, the Black Panther. And so it was Ryan Coogler who felt like they should be flat on the ground, split-toe boot, no heels, no wedge boots. And we crafted a costume that really did represent all the areas of Africa. You have beadwork from the Turkana tribe. You have a leather skirt wrapped like the Himba women who soap the skins of the calf and stretch the edges so that it ruffles. When I viewed a lot of the techniques that were used for a lot of indigenous African craft and tribal wear, I saw so many beautiful ways that we could represent it on this costume. We have the Ndebele neck rings and arm rings that represent South Africa, but we wanted the neck rings to feel like jewelry. So we actually got a jewelry designer to come in and create our prototypes for those pieces. So there's so many ways in which the Dora Milaje costume honors the female form. It has a leather harness that travels around the body, and you'll see it wrap around the bust area and into the waist. And in between, there's a raised printing that mimics scarification. Different tribal customs use scarification as identifying their origin. Sometimes the scars are on the face, sometimes the scars are on the body. And you'll see that represented in many areas and many aspects of different tribal customs. And so this Dora Milaje costume would not be complete without some representation of that tradition. To design for Queen Ramonda, it was very stressful for me at first because in the comics, Queen Ramonda is walking around in yoga pants and barefoot, and she has her white, beautiful dreadlocks, and she's very easygoing. And because we're making a movie and I really wanted you to recognize her as the queen at first glance, when we see her there on the landing pad when T'Challa returns to Wakanda with Nakia, we know right away that that's the queen. And I think it's identifiable in her costume. She has her shoulder mantle, which is 3D printed. She has her ishikolo, which is the married woman's hat from South Africa. And one of the main reasons why it was important to 3D print that piece was I needed it to be perfect. If Wakanda is this forward-thinking place that's leading in technology, the queen would definitely have pieces that represented tradition but also represented new innovations. The first Black Panther suit was seen in the film Captain America: Civil War. I think it was added maybe well into the production, and so there were a lot of things that weren't really sussed out completely. So by the time I came on to the full-blown Black Panther film, I brought the costume to my office and I put it on a mannequin. And I thought, the mannequins just really don't give you the magic. Maybe I need Chadwick Boseman to come into my office. He came in and he put the suit on, and it was magical. And he stretched, and he did his karate poses, and he did all this stuff in my office, and I was completely floored.
Chadwick Boseman as the character of Black Panther.
I wanted to step in and give it my personal spin. I felt like there needed to be a connection between the suit and the place in Wakanda, and I saw that there was an opportunity to add a surface pattern to the suit, which was a triangle. The triangle is sacred geometry of Africa, I like to say. It means the father, the mother, and the child. And because we needed a surface texture, the triangle was developed. But the suit itself, it was designed by Adi Grad of the Marvel Visual Development team. And people don't realize that it really does take a team to create all of the beautiful things that are developed. There's hundreds of illustrations that are put forward. And then it comes into my world. My world is one of design, and it's also one of materialization. And the materialization of the costumes is a big responsibility to understand how the textures will work together. And once we materialize these things, we do prototypes. And so I did a prototype of the panther skin, as you might call it. Several prototypes were developed and submitted for the Marvel executives and Ryan Coogler to take a look at. And so they chose the one that they liked, and then we made the complete suit. I worked with Eddie Murphy for so many years. It was a reunion of sorts. It gave me an opportunity to reacquaint myself with his body type and how things change as you get a little bit older. Things do change. So at that point, I needed to go back to the first movie and really study it and find the things that we wanted to extract and keep, and then move it forward. I mean, going from Wakanda to Zamunda, it really needed to have its own signature and its own look. When I was on Black Panther, I would tell my crew and everyone coming on to the job that, hey, this is not coming to America. Even though it was a great film, Wakanda needed to really have its own identity. And here I am on Coming to America saying to everyone, this is not Wakanda. So I really examined what was really great about the design on the first movie and what we really could expect in a sequel, because we're much more sophisticated now. We have seen African royalty, and we really...
Be honest in the comments. When it comes to the movie Coming to America and the costume design, how well did she do?
We need to address the audience and their knowledge of Africa. One of the things that I'd like to say we modernized or we made different in Coming to America was we were cruelty-free. If you remember, the king wears a lion on his shoulder when he comes to America. And Prince Hakeem, he also wears like an ocelot over his shoulder. And the new Coming to America, we decided that we would 3D print the lion on the shoulder. And I like the idea of it being a piece of jewelry as well. So we printed it in gold, and we gemmed the eyes and the nose. And as you might know, even the Maasai tribe in Africa, traditionally they killed a lot of lions, but now they have technology that helps them chart where the lion herds are so that they won't follow their herd of cattle and they can steer away from it. So that all connects to technology for me as well. We 3D printed the lion on the shoulder of Prince Hakeem. So we had very little time to create all of the majesty of the looks, especially for the Queen of Zamunda. And we actually had the embroidery done in India, but we sent them a detailed sketch which included a lot of Ankara symbols, African masks, the Ankh, and we had these things embroidered onto her costume and her cape so that we could, honor these African symbols. So I'm a longtime collaborator with Spike Lee. He gave me my first...
Do the Right Thing?
First opportunity on school days, which was his first studio picture, and I really felt like I was part of the 40 Acres film family. We returned to New York, to Brooklyn every year to do a new film, and we were excited about what he had in mind with a film like Do the Right Thing. It was a response to a lot of the things that were going on in New York at the time, in Bensonhurst, the tension between the Italian Americans and Black Americans in Brooklyn, the Tawana Brawley case, and Mike Tyson. There were so many things that were happening in New York, and it was Spike's response to that, Do the Right Thing. It was done at a budget, and so we had to depend on a lot of product placement, and Nike was a big product placement company that we were using. And a lot of the sportswear, the colors and the tones were saturated, and it was very difficult to bring in so many saturated tones in the compression shorts and the basketball shorts and the jerseys that all of the actors wore. It was very hard to incorporate that into the everyday look of Brooklyn, New York. If you look past the Do the Right Thing set and you looked at real Brooklyn, it looked a lot different than Do the Right Thing. Do the Right Thing was stylized, and part of the stylization of the look had to do that with a lot of the color and the color that was brought in through Nike. So the other side of that coin was, how do we bring in the culture of Brooklyn? And we brought in a lot of the Ankara prints, a lot of African materials. You see We Love Radio with Samuel L. Jackson, and he had all of these hats that he wore. When you see the people walking up and down the streets, you see a lot of young people, and they're wearing a lot of athleisure, is what we call it today. But then we were doing a balancing act on pop culture, African influence. So there was so many very stylized aspects of the film. There is even prose in Do the Right Thing where we talk about Eleanor Bumpers, and there's this dialogue that happens in front of Sal's Pizzeria. And it really did give it its own look, its own feeling, and its own purpose, and the writing was so unique, and it stands the test of time today with the issues that it was bringing to light. I knew that it was going to be based on the autobiography of Malcolm X written by Alex Haley. So,
book as well as the movie of Malcolm X.
I'd read the book in high school, and I returned to the book and read it again. And there are some specific things that are mentioned in the book that I really felt that I wanted to make sure we did, like the powder blue zoot suit. And also, I wanted to know a lot more about Malcolm X, the man. I realized that since he was incarcerated in Massachusetts at the Department of Corrections, I did a letter writing campaign to them asking to see his file. And I got to know a little bit more about Malcolm X through his writing. And I felt that that was important since I was going to be creating his wardrobe in times where we didn't know him and we didn't see him in photographs. And I wanted to be able to make those decisions that I felt were critical to telling this story. And he went through several phases. There were these pivotal moments in his life that I wanted to, separate the script and separate the story and really color those times of his life very specifically. So as he was this street hustler, this guy who wore these fancy zoot suits and went to the dance halls, it looked one way. When he became the guy who broke into a house in Boston, we calmed the palette down. When he went into prison, it was very blue for the denim that they all wore, and it kind of cleansed the palette from what he was before. As he emerges from prison and he is going to see Elijah Muhammad for the first time, he's very humble, and that's one of the costumes I'm really the most proud of because it's an old, oversized suit that's a little rumply, and Denzel is playing the character so humble, and I felt like the costume didn't overshadow his performance. It just worked right in there with it. And so those are the things that on the journey of telling someone's life, you really do have to stay connected to those phases, those times in their lives when they are feeling different ways and performing different activities, that you dial it in, you keep dialing it in, and you're constantly working with the actor and how their discovery changes, and you adjust with them. I was interviewed by Ava DuVernay for Selma. I went to her home, I think she calls it a tree house, that overlooks the Hollywood sign. And you know, I really was so impressed with her knowledge and her commitment to telling the story of, I think, Black America's first family, royal family, the Kings. And so I was excited to come together with, you know, a woman as a writer, as a director, as a leader. And there was a mutual respect and admiration. And I felt that there was a trust about the images that I presented. One of them was, you know, Martin Luther King was a robust man. He was, you know, kind of thick, I guess you call it, and he had this little roll of skin that happened over the collar of his shirts. And I've noticed that with other men that I've dressed. You know, it doesn't mean that the shirt is too tight. It's just the flesh that kind of comes over the collar. And I wanted to make sure that David Oyelowo had that same fit. And so I made his shirt, the necks of his shirts, just a tiny bit smaller than his actual size. It worked. He had the roll. And it didn't bother him too much. I saw him thinking, you know, Ruth has made this one, or maybe the laundry caused a little tightness, but I later told him about it, and he agreed that it was an important detail as an aspect of the look of Martin Luther King. Also, because they were the first family, Coretta Scott King was always presented with such elegance and class, and I wanted to really stay in that zone with her and keep what I feel is in Black American culture a tradition of being appropriately dressed, you know, especially in the church. The mother of the church has a certain aura and presence to herself. So we see scenes of them at home at dinner, and everyone actually is dressed for dinner. And to, I guess, a different crowd, maybe that doesn't look natural. In the South, I think there's like a proper thing about, you know, when you go to breakfast, you put your clothes on for the day. You don't go to breakfast in your pajamas. I mean, we're much more relaxed about that now, but I really wanted that kind of structure to be seen in Selma. And then, speaking of the Selma marches, there are so many beautiful photographs of people marching, and they're all in black and white, especially the march over the Edmund Pettus Bridge. And we had people that were little children when that happened, and they were actually a part of our background. And I would talk to them, and they would tell me about things they remembered. I walked around to a lot of the background and say, you know, look at this posture. Look how they have their hands in their pockets. You know, you should do that. And, you know, it really connects you to the filmmaking process, because you have dressed these people based on what you see in the research. You have done all of that work. And so as they are collecting on the set, you want to take it a step further and see the actual posture of the participants in the research come to life in the filming process. And so that became really important and significant to me, that because I dressed to the research, I really wanted to make sure even that the ADs were moving people up front that were supposed to be up front according to the photographs. When Black Panther premiered, it kind of shot me out of a cannon, and everyone wanted to know more. And so the the need to actually tell my story became a little bit more paramount. Over the years, I've amassed a collection of costumes, and now we have created with SCAD Fashion in Atlanta an exhibition. Hopefully, we'll be able to go back to the museums and walk through them the way that we are accustomed to. And so that's really exciting to be able to tell my story, and I'm so proud that people want to hear it. And yeah, it's a lot of years of blood, sweat, and tears that I have experienced to be able to present that.
Just listen to Ruth Carter tell her story. Let me know in the comments, out of all of the movies that she mentioned in this video, which piece of work do you feel is your favorite?